Hi you guys, it's Amanda with Healthy House on the Block, and I'm here with our weekly video and tip on creating an indoor space that truly supports your health and your wellness. And this week we'll be talking about the toxin lead. Now, I think a lot of us have been led to believe that there isn't lead toxins present in our newer homes. It's really something we only need to worry about if we live in an older home. And I am going to tell you throughout this week's video that is just not the case. There are plenty of materials and items that we bring into our home every day that still contain trace amounts of lead. And the other big point that I'm going to reiterate through this video is that no amount of lead is actually safe. Our body cannot use lead, and so instead of detoxifying it when we absorb it, it travels to all of our systems. It can actually be stored in our teeth and in our bones, and especially this is true of children. So we are going to cover everything you need to know about lead in your home, from where it might be to how to handle it in your home right now and how to make changes in the future. Not all toxins that we have in our home are man-made chemicals or toxins. In fact, many toxins in our homes are actually natural elements that we find in nature or in the earth. Lead toxins, which we're talking about today, is one form that has been around since the beginning of time. Lead is a natural element in the earth and in our soil and has been used for centuries in metal production. And while lead toxins have been studied over time, it wasn't until 1979 when a pediatrician and a child psychiatrist began documenting the dangers of lead exposure to children, even at low levels. From there, we've gained insight and learned more and more through studies and research that has been published. And what we've learned is that really no level of lead toxins are safe for our bodies. Lead can quickly be distributed to our organs, our brain, and bones once it enters our body. And the sad thing is, even after knowing all of this, there are still trace amounts of lead toxins allowed in many of our building materials and home items in the US and around the world. So let's take a look at the negative impacts of lead toxins in our health. The most important thing to know about lead toxins is that our bodies do not detoxify lead very quickly. Essentially, lead toxins can stay in the bloodstream for a very long time. And so if you were exposed in small amounts to lead toxins every single day, the level of lead in your bloodstream would increase every single day as your body just can't get rid of this toxin fast enough. And the truth is, there is no system of the body that is not affected by lead toxicity. The central nervous system and the gut are the two biggest areas that we see the worst symptoms due to lead exposure. So this can range from concentration issues to depression, nausea, abdominal pain, fatigue, problems with sleeping, headaches, and even anemia. Lead exposure has also been shown to damage the cell membranes of red blood cells and cells of the immune system, which decreases immune activity. And the most important thing to know is that children often have the worst symptoms as their bodies are much smaller in comparison to the amount of lead it takes to start building up in their systems. And due to the fact that they are in a constant state of growth and development, the absorption of lead can occur more quickly than in adults. And of course, let's not forget that children are more prone to ingest and inhale dust that may contain lead just due to their overall habits. So lead has a half-life of about 40 days in humans. It's even higher in children as their bones are developing, and this can be reintroduced to the bloodstream over and over and over again. And lead in children can cause delays in development, changes in their mood and demeanor, as well as all those other issues that adults see. So do you know where lead is in your home? While many of us have been told that lead is not in newer homes, the truth is that yes, lead is still used today. However, it is used in different materials and in different applications, not all of which are harmful to humans, but it's important to know. So paint manufactured before 1978 can contain lead toxins. This will typically be in older homes. While this paint is often covered up with multiple layers of additional paint that don't contain lead, it's still important to know a few things. Paint that is flaking or cracking can become problematic as the fine particles can mix with your air and your dust, meaning you become exposed to the lead. And if you're ever going to do any sort of remodel work, it's a really good idea to contact a contractor who is certified to deal with lead in safe ways. Another area is pipes. This would be typically before 1940. And the easy way to tell if you have lead pipes is by simply looking at them. Lead pipes are often dull gray in color, and if you were to take a sharp object such as a key and scratch the pipe, you would see a shiny silver line left by the object. Often lead pipes were just used in drain pipes, and so technically there is little concern for your health. Lead drum traps are another thing you may see in an older home. If you see these pipes and they start to deteriorate, it's a really good idea to replace them with ABS or PVC, but until then, leave them undisturbed. Solder is another area we see lead. This is mostly before 1986. So if you have copper pipes in your home, they're most likely soldered together with, solder. Older solder and even some new imported solder can contain toxins, lead toxins, which could then leach into your water supply. Copper piping is often the lines that run directly to your fixtures and your faucets, meaning this is an area for concern. So make sure you use a point of use filter if you do have copper pipes that were installed prior to 1986. Food and spices is another area that we need to pay attention to. Soil often contains large amounts of lead. This means that any vegetable that grows either in the ground or close to the ground has potential for lead toxins to be on the produce itself. Some foods and spices that are imported also could contain trace amounts of lead. It is most common in imported candy and in imported spices such as curry, anise, coriander, turmeric, cloves, and chili powder. And then finally, dishes and cookware. Some ceramics can contain lead in the glaze as well as in the interior of the material. Clays often naturally have amounts of lead depending on where it is sourced from. Ceramics imported from other countries or older china or enameled cast iron does have the potential for lead to be in the glaze. Now, after the 1970s, there were stricter rules in the US around dishware, but be aware that imported items to this day can still contain lead toxins. So there are some things that you can do right away to reduce lead exposure in your home that will likely make a large impact on your space and your health. And the most important one is hand washing. This is one of the biggest ways you can reduce lead exposure, especially with children, and it's to wash your hands or their hands before eating or touching food. Lead is not actually absorbed through the skin, but instead it is ingested or inhaled with fine particles. By washing your hands or your kids' hands before meals, you can prevent exposure from anything that may have been touched. If you live in an older home, especially be very diligent about reducing dust wherever you can in your home. Lead from soil outside or materials inside can end up in the dust inside your home. And the truth is, all of us ingest some dust, which can lead to lead exposure. Kids ingest the most dust, but by reducing the amount of dust around the house in general, it's another way to avoid potential exposure. You want to filter your water with a really good water filter to get rid of any lead that could be in your water or leaching into your water. So again, if you have a home that is built prior to 1986 when lead solder was used, a point of use filter is key. Lead can leach into your water from the solder connecting the pipes. And so a point of use filter with the NSF certification is going to be the best way to reduce lead in your water. Another thing is you need to know when to throw things away or replace certain items, especially in the kitchen. If you notice ceramic dishes or cookware that has scratches, you'll want to replace them sooner than later. Other things like doorknobs with worn-off finishes or cabinet knobs with worn-off finishes could potentially expose lead, and that's something you would want to replace as well. You want to stick to spices and candy that have been grown and made right here in the USA. Other countries don't have the regulations and standards that the US does when it comes to trace amounts of lead in foods. You can often look right at the packaging to see where the food is imported from to make your decision. And finally, wash fruits and veggies right away. You can either wash them at the sink or soak them in a vinegar solution before consuming them. This is going to ensure that dust and the soil that could have trace amounts of lead is washed down the drain. Washing fruits and veggies off right away before placing them in your fridge is another way to avoid potential exposure to lead toxins. And as you move forward and know more about lead, there are some areas that you can be very diligent about when you're purchasing new items for your home. So a few weeks ago, I published a post about tile and the potential toxins in different types of tile around your home. Some tile being sold currently does contain lead in the interior of the material. This means it wouldn't likely be problematic unless you were to find a scratch or raw edge exposing the interior. Fire clay tile and NSF certified tile are great options to reduce lead exposure in your home. Doorknobs and cabinet hardware that are made of brass often contain a percentage of lead in the metal. However, a brass doorknob or hardware that is coated with enamel would not expose you to lead. That being said, if the enamel coating were to wear away, exposing the brass underneath, there could be potential lead exposure happening. It's important to go with a solid metal like steel as a great way to reduce our lead exposure. So in case you missed last week's blog post all about lead-free faucets, it is definitely worth a read, or you can find the video on YouTube. Faucets are allowed to contain trace amounts of lead, even in the United States. So you want to look for faucets that advertise 100% lead-free rather than just lead-free. And remember, the material of the waterway in a faucet should be made of stainless steel. And finally, be very smart about your cookware and dishes. Opt for something that has a lead-free glaze and is made in the USA. You want to do your research before you purchase and try to avoid a vintage set if possible, as there's more potential lead exposure from those than new dishes and cookware purchased. Lead, I want to remind you, is not a toxin we need to be scared of, and it's not a toxin we need to fixate on. However, if there's any place in your home where you can reduce exposure, it is so worth your health and your wellness to do so. Thank you so much for being here. I hope that you can take at least some of these tips and apply them to your own home. And I also hope that you will subscribe to my channel, because I am here every single week with new tips and new ideas on creating a healthy home that truly supports your health and your wellness.